she is falling. Still strapped to her seat, a 17-year-old girl tumbles end over end through the sky. The world is a wild mix of green and blue, a spinning blur that makes no sense. There is no sound of an engine, only the terrifying roar of wind rushing past her ears, a sound so loud it feels like the whole world is screaming. She is falling from 2 miles up, a height where clouds are born. Below her lies the Amazon rainforest, a giant green carpet stretching as far as she can see. It is a place of wonder, but from this high up it looks like a hard, unforgiving wall, and she is falling right into it, a tiny human figure against an endless sky. Just a few hours earlier, everything was normal. It was Christmas Eve in the year 1971. The girl, whose name was Juliane Koepcke, was on a small airplane with her mother. They were excited, flying to meet her father to celebrate the holiday together. The plane, Lanza Flight 508, was filled with the happy sounds of people ready for Christmas. Inside the small cabin, people were reading books or looking out the windows at the clouds below. The mood was light and joyful. Juliane and her mother talked about the gifts they would open and the food they would share. It was a trip filled with hope and happiness, a simple flight to bring a family together for a special day. But Juliane was not like most other 17-year-olds. She carried a special kind of knowledge inside her, a secret that would soon become her only hope. Her parents were famous scientists, zoologists who studied animals. They did not live in a normal city house. They lived in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. For years, Juliane grew up surrounded by the deep green world of the jungle. She didn't just visit it on trips, it was her home. She learned to walk on its soft ground, to listen to its strange animal calls, and to feel its rhythms. Her father taught her about the plants that could heal and the ones that could harm. She learned which insects were dangerous and which were just noisy. She knew how to find water and how to follow the small streams that acted like secret paths through the thick trees. This was not school learning. This was life learning. The jungle was her teacher, and she was its student, never knowing that one day it would give her the biggest test of all. As their plane flew on, the happy mood began to change. Outside the window, the sky grew dark. Huge, towering clouds, black and angry, rose up like mountains in front of them. The small plane began to shake, at first just a little, and then a lot. The pilot was trying to fly through a giant thunderstorm, a wall of wind and rain. People on the plane grew quiet, their happy smiles replaced by worried faces. The shaking became worse, and bags fell from the overhead bins. It felt like the plane was a tiny toy being tossed around by a giant, unseen hand. The roar of the storm outside was now louder than the plane's own engines. Then, a flash of light brighter than anything Juliane had ever seen filled the cabin, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The plane was hit by lightning. A wing broke off, and the world turned upside down. In an instant of pure chaos, the plane tore apart in midair. Juliane, still buckled into her seat, was thrown out into the storm, beginning her long, impossible fall back to the world she knew so well, the jungle below. Her body tumbled through the air, a small shape against a storm-dark sky. The wind screamed past her ears, a sound so loud it felt like silence. She was still strapped into her row of seats, a tiny piece of a broken puzzle falling from the clouds. The green world below rushed up to meet her, not as solid ground, but as a sea of leaves and branches. Then, everything went black. The fall should have ended everything. But the rainforest, in its own way, caught her. The plane seat hit the very top of the thick jungle trees, called the canopy. It crashed through layer after layer of leaves and vines. Each branch that broke slowed her down a little more. The jungle acted like a giant green net, softening the terrible landing. For a whole day and night, she lay on the wet ground, not moving. The storm that tore the plane apart passed by, and the sounds of the jungle returned. Rain dripped from giant leaves. Strange birds called out from hidden branches. The world was alive, but she was lost in a deep, dark sleep, unaware that she had survived. Around her, the jungle floor was a tangle of life and shadow. The broken metal of her seat was wrapped in green vines. The air was thick and heavy, smelling of wet earth and flowers. Nothing else from the plane was nearby. It was as if she and her chair had been dropped from the sky into a secret, forgotten world, completely and utterly alone. When Juliane finally woke up, it was to a world of green light and strange sounds. The roar of the plain was just a bad memory. Now, she heard the buzz of insects, the chatter of monkeys, and the constant drip, drip, drip of water from the leaves above. She was still buckled into her seat, a passenger on a flight that had landed in a place with no airport. She slowly unbuckled the belt and stood up on shaky legs. She called out for her mother, her voice small in the huge green space, but no one answered. Only the echoes of the forest and the calls of the animals replied. The plain, the other people, the life she knew just one day before, had all disappeared. She was the only one left. Her body ached with a deep, powerful pain. She touched her shoulder and felt the sharp edge of a broken collarbone. A long, deep cut on her leg was still bleeding. One of her eyes was swollen completely shut, and her head pounded. The world was a blurry, confusing place because she had lost her glasses in the fall. The shock of it all was like a thick fog in her mind. The pain was real, but it felt far away, as if it were happening to someone else. She had also lost one of her shoes, and her thin dress was torn. For the first few days, she could barely think clearly. She was just a hurt and confused girl, walking through a dream she couldn't wake up from. After wandering for a time, a change began to happen inside her. The hope of hearing her mother's voice or seeing another person started to fade away. The deep quiet of the jungle told her a hard truth. She was on her own. The sadness was huge, like a heavy weight. It would have been easy to just give up. But then, a new feeling started to grow. Pushing through the sadness was a tiny spark of something else. She found a small bag of candy in her pocket, something she had from the plane. It was just a little thing, but it was a link to her old life. It was a sign of luck, and it was enough to make her decide that she would not just wait. She would fight to live. Her father's advice was her only map. Follow the water. For 11 long days, this simple rule was her entire world. The small stream she found grew into a bigger one, and she followed it, step by painful step, through the thick, green jungle. This journey was not a simple walk. The banks of the stream were home to snakes, so Juliane often had to walk in the water itself. The cold water swirled around her waist, making every movement slow and hard. Night brought no rest. The jungle buzzed with insects that bit her without mercy. Sleep was nearly impossible. Her body was covered in painful red welts, and her strength was fading with each passing hour. The cuts and scratches she got from the crash and the jungle were becoming a serious problem. In the wet, dirty world of the rainforest, her wounds started to get infected. This means bad germs were growing inside them, making them sore and swollen. Then came a truly awful discovery. In a deep cut on her arm, she saw something moving. A fly had laid eggs in her open wound, and now, small creatures called maggots were living under her skin. The horror of this was almost too much to bear. After 10 days of walking, she saw something that made her heart leap. A small hut and a boat tied to the riverbank. It was the first sign of other people she had seen since the crash. Hope, bright and powerful, flooded through her. The hut was empty, but it held a strange kind of medicine. She found a can of gasoline, used for the boat's motor. She remembered her father once telling her how gasoline could be used to clean a wound. Facing her fear, she poured the stinging fuel onto her arm, forcing the maggots out. The next day, the men who used the hut returned. They were local lumberjacks, men who cut down trees for wood. They found this young girl, hurt and alone, but alive. The long, lonely fight was finally over. The feeling of being saved was almost too big to understand. Juliane's survival was more than just good luck. Falling into the soft leaves of the jungle was lucky, yes, but staying alive for 11 days was not. It was the result of the lessons her parents, who were scientists, had taught her about the wild. Her father's advice to follow water led her to safety. His words about gasoline helped her treat a terrible wound. Her story shows us that knowledge, even simple knowledge, is one of the most powerful tools for survival, a testament to the unbreakable will to live. Then she found it. A tiny stream, no wider than her arm, trickling through the thick green leaves. Water. It was the first sign of real hope, a silver thread of life in a world of green and brown. This little stream was more than just a drink. It was a map, a guide out of the endless jungle. Her father, a scientist who loved the rainforest, had once told her something very important. He said that if you are ever lost in the jungle, you must find water. Small streams flow into bigger streams, and bigger streams flow into rivers, and where there are rivers, there are people. Following the stream was not easy. The water was sometimes deep, and the ground was slippery with mud and wet leaves. She had to climb over fallen trees and push through sharp plants that tore at her clothes and skin. With only one shoe, every step was a careful, painful decision. The pain from her broken collarbone was a constant, sharp reminder of the fall. The deep cut on her leg was angry and red, and the jungle's damp air made it feel worse. All over her arms and legs, insect bites had become swollen and sore, like dozens of tiny fires burning on her skin. Because of her injuries and the hard journey, a deep tiredness began to pull at her. Hunger was a constant ache inside her. The small bag of candy she found was gone now. The jungle was full of life, but she didn't know which plants were safe to eat, so she ate nothing. At night, the jungle changed. It became a place of strange sounds and unseen movements. From the darkness, she could hear the calls of animals she did not know. Sometimes she would see pairs of glowing eyes watching her from the shadows, a scary reminder of how alone she truly was. This fight was not just against the jungle, it was a fight inside her own mind. Every moment, she had to push away the dark thoughts that told her to give up. She had to hold on to the memory of her mother and the hope of seeing her father again, using that love as fuel to keep moving. After days of walking, she noticed the stream was getting wider. This was a good sign. It meant she was on the right path. Her father's words were true. This small change in the water gave her a big feeling of relief. Hope, which had been so small, started to grow a little stronger. She learned to share the river with its other creatures. She saw large crocodiles, called caimans, sunning themselves on the muddy banks. She learned to spot the flat shapes of stingrays hiding in the shallow water. She gave them space, moving quietly and carefully, a visitor in their world. This constant need to be careful made her even more tired, but it also kept her mind sharp. Every sense was working hard, listening for danger, looking for a safe place to step. Fear was no longer just a feeling. It was a tool that helped her pay attention and stay alive.